Welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Our guest today is Barrie Cohen, owner and founder of BC Public Relations. She founded her boutique public relations firm on three principles: creativity, customizations, and collaboration, where she works closely with clients to achieve their business goals. Today, we will talk about her career change journey, how she found her purpose, and how you can use PR to make yourself and your business thrive. Hi, Barry. Welcome to the Career Changers.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So let's start with your background. How did you start your professional life, or better, what was your first job?
So my first job is very different than what I did now. I mean, I my first real job I worked in restaurants. So very different than the career that I have now in PR, but I started my career not really thinking I was going to do PR at all. I went to school for creative writing and I wanted to be a writer and write for magazines, and I had an opportunity to intern with a family friend who had a PR company, and I just fell in love with it. I just loved everything about it. It was fast paced, creative. There was always something going on, always something different and new. And so I sort of fell into the career through a family friend and had different jobs within the PR industry, and then decided to start my own business sort of on a whim. Again, unexpectedly.
Oh, well, this is a great story. So, and what was your dream job when you were a child?
I had three dream jobs. I wanted to be a waitress, a princess, and a veterinarian. So, 3 very different things that I ended up never doing. So, that's I guess that was my dream, and I also always knew I wanted to be a writer, I think as I got older, but I do a little bit of that. So, there's still some of the writing piece within PR.
Mm. And what is your educational background, and did it have an impact on the choices you made in your career?
Yes. So I went to school at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I studied creative writing in Spanish. I wanted to write for National Geographic or write for travel magazines because travel is a big passion of mine. And so I learned a lot on the foundation of how to write well, how to write creatively, all of the different varying skill sets that go into writing more longer form content. But then as I got into PR, it was really helpful to have a solid foundation and a writing background because most of what we do is writing. We write emails, we write pitches, blogs, articles. So that training really helped me as I got into my career in PR, and I sort of learned on the job.
Hmm. So you mentioned previously that you discover the world of PR, you find passionate about it. Was it that the moment where you decided to leave your writing career behind and change and found BC Public Relations?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a career in writing. I mean, I wrote on the side a little bit for publications, but I was working for other people in PR. I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and I had a boss that wasn't great, which I think all of us have had experience in that in our careers in various ways. And I left a job after a short amount of time because it just wasn't a good fit. And I figured if this person could do it, then I could do it as well and maybe do it better. And so it just sort of started. I really didn't have a plan. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and be a business owner. I just wasn't sure what that was, and because of a bad experience working for someone, it kind of pushed me to go out on my own and sort of figure it out as I went without a whole lot of experience.
Hmm. And so let's talk about PR as you are here to share your expertise with our listeners. And nowadays it's really important, whether it's for personal promotion or business promotion, to use PR. But also there is maybe some confusion due to the fact that social media is everywhere. So maybe it's not so clear. So can we start by explaining what public relation is and why it's crucial for both individuals and businesses?
You're so right. I think PR is so many things today. And so I think it can be confusing, and the lines between PR and marketing are often blurred. And we work really well together because those two things need each other. And so I think what people associate PR with is becoming famous, right? That's what we kind of see in the media is celebrities or going viral. That's kind of this idea of what PR is. But what it really is building your public perception. And so it's putting information out there. It's giving yourself, if you're an individual brand or your business or your organization, a voice when you might not have it. And so the way we utilize PR, a lot of what we do is through media relations, through different opportunities, whether it's TV, podcast, print, newspaper articles, where people can share their unique stories and share their voice to a larger audience who might be compelled to want to hire them or buy from them or resonate with them, right? It's creating that human connection, I think. That's the biggest piece for me. And it's about storytelling. It's how can you tell your story in a way that's impactful for your community?
Mm. And how does PR differ from other forms of marketing and communication, as we mentioned before, like especially social media that nowadays is everywhere?
So they work together. So, for example, like with social media, we often will have somebody who will, whether they're on our team or on a client's team, they'll promote whatever opportunities that we're getting them in the media. So there's a way we work hand in hand. But I think marketing is a lot about driving sales, right? So you're doing various things in the digital landscape, whether it's social media, whether it's ads, that's directly driving sales. For PR, we're building that reputation and recognition of your brand. We're creating brand awareness and we're storytelling in order again for people to connect with you and want to know more about you, and whether that turns into them hiring you for a service or buying your product. It's about building that foundation so that people get to know you, they know, like, and trust you. And so that's how they differ a bit, but they all go hand in hand. So again, there's that blurred line, because I think in order for PR to do really well and for marketing to do really well, we kind of have to do them together.
Mm. And how can a well-executed PR strategy impact the growth and reputation of a business or a personal brand?
It's about being really strategic and targeted. And so you can throw everything at the wall and hope it sticks, but that often doesn't work because it takes a lot of time and effort. And so when you work with someone like me or another PR professional, we really want to create this very specific targeted strategy that focuses on your target audience, right? And so if you have a business in any industry where you have a very specific audience, and maybe that's based on your geographic location, maybe that's based on education, interests, and hobbies, we want to kind of target those specific people that we know if we get in front of, they might be the most interested audience in what you have to say. And so we look at various markets, demographics, obviously the angles and story and the messaging that we want to put out there. And so we go through that whole process of creating that strategy so that when it comes time to put a client forward facing in the media, everything that's put out there, one, they feel comfortable with, but it's exactly what they want the public to know. And so that's where kind of a PR professional comes in to create that strategy to make sure it's really targeted for your specific market demographic in your industry.
Hmm. So let's talk about building a PR strategy, something that maybe small businesses or individuals may not know really well how to do.
Sure.
What are the key components of an effective PR strategies, whether it's a business or an individual looking to thrive in their industry?
Yeah, I would say the first place is to do this market research. So to look where you are locally, right? Your local market is the best place you can start. We all love this idea of being on Good Morning America or being in Forbes because those names are big and we resonate with them, and those are attainable things at some point, but it's really important to nurture the relationships in your local community. So I always say do this market research first of where you're located geographically, and then look at what are people in the demographic, in your target demographic, what are they listening to? What are they reading? And that's very it might seem tedious, but it's easy to think about when you look at, okay, younger people are obviously on social media, right? Millennials, Gen Z, social media, they're looking at podcasts, they're reading the news on their phone, as opposed to maybe an older demographic who might be still reading the New York Times in a physical newspaper, or they might be reading magazines. And so you kind of have to do this research to see where is your target audience getting their information and how are they doing that? And that narrows it down a bit because it can be a little daunting when you're trying to figure out, okay, where am I even sending things out to? And then before that, I think it's really important to hone in on your story. What are the unique differentiators? What are the things that make you stand out from your competition? Is it your background, your expertise? Do you do volunteer and philanthropic work? Are you offering a service that no one in your area is offering? So, really pulling those things out and creating your story. And then, if you're going to go down the route of pitching yourself and sending these to the media on your own, I mean, I always suggest having a PR professional because it takes a lot of time and work. But if you're doing it on your own, I think you just need to be really mindful of the journalists and reporters you're sending things out to because they're getting lots and lots of emails a day, and we want to make sure that you're sending it out to the right people and that they're covering the topics that you would want to speak on.
Mm. So one of the biggest problems for small businesses or startup may be budget. So how can small businesses or startup develop a PR strategy on a limited budget?
Sure. So I know we work with lots of small to medium sized businesses. And so we're very willing to work within their budget. And I know that's a big factor for a lot of people. And so I think it really comes down to your PR goals and what makes the most sense for you. If you really are looking to drive business through social media, then that's one piece that you can focus on rather than all these other pieces. So I think one, it's really important to get clear what your PR goals are first, knowing that there's a lot of work. And then really, again, looking at where people listen to things. So we offer a service where we just pitch podcasts, and that's definitely more cost effective. And the ROI is so great. We're seeing amazing opportunities for our clients through being guests on podcasts. And so that's a way to kind of get your foot in the door before you start all these other big PR opportunities. And so there's various ways we can work with people. I think you just have to be clear on your budget, but I think you also need to understand that PR is a long-term process. It's different than marketing and social media where you put something out and you get an immediate response. It can take weeks, it can take months for us to get responses. And so even if you're doing it on your own, you need to know that it takes a lot of time to get those opportunities and you have to be willing to be in it for the long term.
Mm. So let's talk about storytelling. What role does it play in PR, and how can businesses or individuals craft compelling narratives?
So for me, it's everything in PR. I think everything comes down to your story and how do you tell it? And how do you pull out the things that are really impactful that could impact your community, impact the audience you want to reach, that create a human connection, right? So I think today we're more focused on the person behind the brand and the organization than we are a product or service that they do. Yeah, it's great. They're offering something that's really interesting and new, but I know for me, like, I wanna know their why. Why did they create their business? Why are they doing what they're doing? And that makes me feel a little more invested in them and want to then go to them for whatever services or products that they have. And so I think it's really critical to hone in on those things that make you relevant to what's happening today, that add visibility into your business and maybe a little bit of vulnerability into you and your business, and the things that kind of cut through the noise of your competition. You know, you might be one of 20 similar businesses in an area, and that can be really challenging. But I guarantee there are things that set you apart. It might take a little while to figure out what those things are, but that's what I would focus on is what are the ways in which you're different and impactful for your community.
Mm. And are there other ways apart identifying our whys to identify the core elements of our story and make it resonate with our audiences?
Sure. I think it's important to, look what's trending in the news today. You know, That's what, my team and I try to do is we try to relate our clients to what's happening in the economy and in the health landscape, in any sort of industries that we're in. We wanna look at what's trending in those spaces and then have our clients give their perspectives and their thoughts on what's happening in the world. And so I think that's really critical. You want to be an asset. You want to provide value to the media, right? That's what they're gonna look for. They're gonna want to look for is your opinion differing or how is it unique to what's happening in the world? So I think it's really important to anything you're doing to relate to what's relevant today. And that's very simple of just, reading a few articles in your space or, being on Google alerts or just, keeping up with the news cycle. I think that's really important and helps you craft your story and again makes you stand out a bit.
Mm. So let's talk about personal brand. What are some practical steps that anyone can take to start building a personal brand through PR?
So I think what's critical to know before you even get to the process of PR is making sure you have all of the marketing assets ahead of time. So, do you have a website? Do you have a logo, a name, color palette, right? All of the physical branding that you need, graphics, imagery, you know, messaging from the perspective of even if you need somebody in PR to kind of help you work through that messaging, do you have a general idea of, who you are and what you offer? So I think all those things are really important ahead of time before we can get into the PR piece, because anytime we send something out, anyone's going to want to know, do you have a website? Do you have a headshot? Do you have a bio? So some of these marketing assets are really important to get to ahead of time. And then again, it's doing that once you have all of those, it's doing that research of who's your target audience, who are the people you want to reach the most, what do you want to say, right? Like if we're looking at brand messaging, like what are the things that you want to get across every single time, whether it's on your website, whether it's in social media, if you're doing email newsletters, if you're writing blogs, like we want to have this consistency of messaging across the board in everything we send so that as people get to know you, they resonate with that message, right? And they recognize it. They see it multiple times over and over again. And so those are the key pieces that we need from a PR perspective before we can even, put you out there. And then it's really working with the client. I like to say that PR is a journey that we walk together. It's not something that we just do and you just sit there and wait. It's really important for us for it to be a partnership where the client is telling us what they want from a PR perspective, not just their goals, but hey, I have these big dreams of here's the media I want and here's what I want to convey to the public. Here's what I'm not so interested in talking about. And really working together so that the strategy and the plan develops over time and they have a piece of it, right? Like they get to be part of creating what they want their strategy to be.
Mm. So, based on our personality, whether we are introvert or extrovert, it may be more challenging or less to self promote ourselves. How can we balance authenticity with strategic self promotion?
That's a great question. I think it's one being really clear on how you want to put yourself out there. I know for me, I love podcasts, I love writing articles, but anytime I've had to do a TV interview, I'm super nervous. It makes me really, really nervous. And I've had clients like that who prefer not to be in the spotlight that way. So I think you have to really get clear on what you feel comfortable with because we never want to push anybody and we want you want your strategy to reflect your personality and how you want to go about this. So I think one, you don't have to be on TV, right? There's so many ways today where we can get you out there. So I think that's a really big piece is understanding that. And then also being ready, I think PR is shiny and wonderful, but you also have to be ready for what happens when it does work really well. And then it's a time commitment. So that has to be something that you want to do, right? Like you want to take some time out to do a podcast. That might be an hour of your day, multiple times a week. If you do get an influx of opportunities from these various media, like media outlets and media opportunities, like, are you ready to handle that? Is your business ready? Is that something that you want? And so I think there's a lot of questions that go into it before you even get to that piece. But I think understanding what you feel comfortable with and knowing you don't have to do all of it. Like, I think some people get bogged down where they're like, I have to do social media. I have to do this. I have to do that. You don't have to do any of it. Like, I also don't love social media and I do what I feel comfortable with. And so I think you have to really understand who you are as a person and what you want out of this, knowing that you can craft it in a way that feels really comfortable to you.
Mm. And are there any specific platform or channel that work better for personal branding?
Again, I think it's preference. So, if we're looking at social media, and you're a business owner, I think LinkedIn is a really crucial place to start. Not every business should be on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. I think you have to look at, again, your demographics, but your type of business. So I think if you're an entrepreneur and a business owner, I think LinkedIn, especially to build your personal brand, but also your organization's brand, I think is really critical. I would say LinkedIn for everybody. And then again, I think it's looking at your industry and looking at, if you're in the healthcare space, blogs and articles and journals are really crucial. So maybe that's where you want to take your brand and you want to be a thought leader in that space. Maybe you also have a book and you want to do speaking opportunities. And that's another thing to look at, right? Like if you feel comfortable in that space. And so I think it really, again, depends on what you want out of this, but also what you feel comfortable with in your industry. And so, if you're a medical provider, maybe doing TikTok videos is not, it might be fun, but that might not drive the needle for your business, right? But speaking at conferences and being on podcasts, talking about, medical innovations, like that might be where you really want to be. So I think, again, it's really critical to decide what you want out of PR, but what makes the most sense for your industry as well and where people are consuming information.
Mm. So let's talk about media relations. Probably everyone is trying to get some attention and some coverage. In your experience, what are some effective strategies for getting media coverage and building relationship with journalists and influencers?
Sure. So again, it takes a long time, but I think doing your research ahead of time and making sure that the person you're sending out your pitches to is the right person. And I say that because the reporters and journalists will get hundreds of pitches a day, and we want to make sure that they cover the topics, right? If you're in healthcare or you're in SaaS or finance, like you don't want to pitch the wrong person because they're never going to look at it. And they might be upset that you're pitching them something that you didn't do the research. So I think that's one. I think number two, when you're crafting your pitch, it's really important in there to call out this person personally, right? Not just by name, but hey, I read X, Y, and Z article and I really enjoyed you speaking about A, B, and C. So we want to make sure that we're having that personal touch when we're sending out the pitches. So again, it lets them know that you've done the research, you understand that they cover exactly the topics that you can speak to, and then keeping it really short. That's probably the hardest part is because you have so much you want to say, right? You want to tell them all the things that you're amazing at, all the things you can speak to. It's gonna take a little bit of time to kind of rein that in, but the shorter the better because, again, they don't have a lot of time to read your whole pitch. So, like, 2 paragraphs. That sounds like not a lot, but that's kind of what we wanna aim for, to getting right to the point, like, "Here is who you are, here is the problem, here's how I can solve it." Very, very cut and dry. Again, weaving in your personality, showing that that they cover this story, but those are the things that are really critical, and then respecting their time. We're all humans. It might take us a little bit of time to respond to things, so, we don't want to follow up with journalists every single day. We wanna give them the space to read your pitch, to maybe think about it, and maybe after a week, week and a half, you wanna check back in. So I think those are really important key pieces that can kind of help you, but again, understanding that it might just take some time. There's no secret formula that takes X amount of weeks or months. Sometimes it happens quickly and sometimes it takes a little bit more time.
Mm. And what is one of the most common mistake to avoid when reaching out to the media, if you can think of the most common and popular?
Probably using the wrong name. That's probably really, but we do that, right? Like sometimes with our emails. So making sure you're sending it to the right person. And again, making sure they cover that topic. And I've been guilty of it. Sometimes I'll send a reporter something and
Mm.
some are, very kind and say, hey, I just don't cover this topic, but I'll send you somewhere else. Others, and I understand, are frustrated. So they'll say, no, I don't want to cover this. So I think it's really important to do that homework because we obviously want the positive response of people wanting to do a story with you. So that's probably the two biggest mistakes that I see, but that we make sometimes. It just happens.
Wow. And so how do you know usually who is the right person?
Well, that's hard. I mean, so I would say that's where having a PR professional comes into play because we have those relationships, right? We've worked with some of the same people. We have access to databases of media contacts that you might not have. And so we can see who covers what, and we just sort of innately know because you've been in the industry for a while, so we know who covers certain stories and certain topics. We've worked with some of the same reporters. So we built those relationships over time. So I think that's where a PR professional comes in that kind of alleviates that burden. And also, we're sending, it depends, however many clients you have, you might be sending hundreds of pitches a week. And that's a lot of volume, right? And if you're running your business and doing all the things you need to do every day, like who wants to send all those emails? Who has the time? And so I think there's a lot of benefit to having somebody on your side who can help you with those things.
Hmm. So we're reaching the end of this episode, but we still have a few more questions. So first of all, what is one thing you wish you had known about PR when you first started your career or business journey?
I think one, just being an entrepreneur, the ebb and flow and how it's every other day is different. And it's what I love about PR in general. I love the craziness of all of it. I kind of thrive in the multitasking and the nonstop pace, but I think being a business owner is really hard, and no one really tells you how hard it is until you're in it, right? There's so many things you're juggling. For a long time, it was just me. Now I have a team. So now I'm not only doing the work, but I'm managing people. And again, these are things you have to learn on your own. So I wish I had had a little bit more guidance on, what it takes to start a business. I think I've done really well, and we're very successful and have been around for 7 years, and that's a big accomplishment. But yeah, I don't know if it ever gets easier over time. I think it just evolves, and you have to learn to go with that, and that's hard. I wish someone had told me that that's what it's like.
Hmm. And what advice would you give to someone just starting out with PR, either for their business or personal brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a business who's trying to utilize PR, I think be kind to yourself. Again, because it can get discouraging. You can send a lot of pitches and not get a lot of responses, and that may mean you have to change your approach or change your story. But don't get discouraged. It takes some time. And then I think if you're looking to get into PR, I found for me, uh, I never said no to something. When I started out, I had a lot of opportunities that I didn't know what I was doing, and I would say yes, and I'd get off the phone, and then I'd research how to do it. And it gave me a lot of opportunities to work with clients that I probably never would have, and have experiences and work on projects that I never would have had I worked for someone else. And so I think, say yes and then figure it out later, I think is a really good way to approach PR and approach your business, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities. And I think it's really important to kind of learn as you go and have those experiences.
Mm. So before the last question, if anyone would like to reach out to you to know more about PR, how and where they can find you?
Sure. So they can find us on our website, bcpublicrelations.com. They can also email me directly, barrie@barriecohen.com, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to answer questions, talk to anybody.
That's great. So the last question that we ask to all of our guests. So if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I would probably say just keep moving forward. Things will be challenging. You'll have moments that stop you in your tracks, but just keep going. Have a day, take a day, have a pity party, try it out, and then keep moving.
Well, thank you, Barry, so much for joining us today and sharing your inspirational career and expertise with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me.
And a last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.